Felt like Groundhog Day a little bit. We got another close game at Marvel, which we don't mind. Much better quality than last night, but ultimately at three-quarter time, after yet another after a siren goal after Jade Gresham's last night, it was clear that it wasn't going to be which club's better players would stand up. It was going to be a case of which side's B to C graders would make the least amount of mistakes. And that was answered by the Doggies. Let's talk about it. As always with these game reviews, I want to talk about the winners first. I know that mainstream footy media likes to pilot on the losers of these games, rightly or wrongly. I'm thinking in a more reactionary world, it is more wrongly, to be honest. Look at the Bombers, for example. So let's start with the Doggies, who did have some statistics go against them in this game. They had less forward 50s on the night. They had less contested ball on the night. But at Marvel, contested ball is maybe not the way to go. I also think that having your home games being at Marvel, being a tenant is the phrase that I'm looking for there, is actually hurting clubs. As finals get more and more contested, then this uncontested running style is affecting clubs in a negative way, just straight up. Yes, I know the Bulldogs have won a flag in the last decade, but Carlton, St. Kilda haven't really looked close to it. The Bombers, we know what's happened to them in recent finals. And whilst, yes, uncontested ball, transition running and scoring off turnover are obviously still going to be important in the modern game and always will be, I still think that is a factor. Anyway, back to the result of tonight's game. What was really pleasing to see with the Doggies is that they were able to have some lesser lights stand up in big moments, and two of them stood out in significant ways. I'll get to those in a second. Let's start with the biggest thing that I have loved, and that is Tom Liberatore as captain. Not only for his performances on field, but the way that he carries himself, the way that he seemingly connects with this group. Now, by no means am I saying that the Bont should not be the captain of the Bulldogs. I actually do think, though, it can be a conversation that can be had. I understand that it's only a 3-game sample size. And again, I'm not trying to kick the Bont out of his job. I am really not. But the ability to ask these questions and ponder these things is going to be interesting. The Bont has carried the Doggies on his back for a while and has had games as a leader that have produced almighty results. Libba has also carried a little bit. I didn't think he was the Dogs' best player in that final quarter, but he was one of the half dozen standouts. I thought it was really interesting to see how many of his fellow players would come with him, and the answer to that was plenty of them, which was awesome. So a massive tick to Libba. Some lesser lights that deserve a bit of love. James O'Donnell, his move forward seemingly worked. Is it preparing for life after Jamara? That actually doesn't matter. And I know that I've floated that question, but it really got annoying how often Jamara was mentioned here. Look, I don't pretend to know the exact specifics of what's going on, and I don't want it speculated in the comment section because it's none of our business. It just isn't. And we'll wait and see how that pans out. But the group that were on the field did it beautifully. I thought their forward line, apart from that first quarter, but they did still have 5 scoring shots. They all went through as behinds, but functioned quite nicely. They were able to generate space inside their forward 50 the longer the game went on, and we'll talk about why that's the case in the Carlton analysis here. But down back, they did not look very strong at all. It seemingly, take Jacob Wiedering out of the equation for a minute. Every other key defender that has played so far in this round, and in fact, my apologies, Zach Reid is also included in this. So Jacob Wiedering and Zach Reid, tick. Every other key defender that has played so far has been awful. Or maybe awful's a little bit harsh, but they've not been good by any stretch. Yes, Rory Lobb had a lot of metres gained, and I'm not saying that he was horrible, but I don't care if you have 400 metres gained as a tall defender when the other tall forwards in this side, even if you take Charlie out of it for a second, right? When you have Brodie Kemp kicking 5, and I loved what Brodie did, you have Lewis Young kicking 2, yeah, I'm not going to go, thank you for getting us 500 metres of metres gained. I'm not going to do that. I still think it's handy. Don't get me wrong, being on the offensive when you're rebounding the ball out of your defensive half is still a good thing. An 8-point win instead of, say, an 8-point loss shouldn't mean your criticism or critique changes too much. It wouldn't be for the players that played well. It's not going to be the case here. Some of their smaller defenders, though, played really well. I really liked what I saw from Bailey Williams for the majority of this game. Joel Frazier was quiet, but I thought he's improving on his season quite nicely. And the last 10 minutes by Bailey Dale were unbelievable. Moving through the midfield, we are watching Riley Sanders grow, and what he showed during his draft year is becoming more and more evident as his career keeps expanding. Maybe it was the right idea how they managed him last year. From what we've seen in the last fortnight, not the worst thing in the world in the slightest. Josh Dolan as sub looked outstanding. Of course, we need to talk about Sam Davidson, the doctor, who was absolutely outstanding. I am genuinely stunned no one on commentary. They may have on Channel 7, I don't know. But no one went with that's what the doctor ordered at any point throughout, because he is a medical student, if you didn't know, and he's just advertising that VFL players need to get drafted, which I know is not a new concept, and I know there have been ones in the past. But having 18-year-olds on your list is not a bad thing. But when you hit pick 60, having mature bodies there available that have had senior experience, give them a go. You never know. Pick 60s are a hit and miss anyway. The only downside to it now is that there kind of is a little bit of expectation that they become good players. Dylan Moore, as an example, I know there's going to be more that I'm mentioning here, guys, but it'll take too long in this video. But you got Dylan Moore, you got Mitch Lewis, even though he's unhealthy, Harry Morrison for the Hawks, so tick to the Hawks, obviously. But Nick Larkey, again, as an example of guys that are taken late in the draft in quite recent drafts. And as we know, there are going to be more and more players that add themselves to that list as they keep going. And there are going to be more that you can think of. I'm not deliberately omitting them. But the other guy that I want to shout out here, and is probably in the rolling All-Australian team, let alone squad, at this moment, if you wanted to do a traditional half-forward role, and that's Latham Vandermeer. Now, he is rocking the Slim Shady 2002 style haircut at the moment, which is extraordinary. But one of the biggest moments was with about 10.5 minutes to go in the last quarter. I'd love to show you the vision, but hey, copyright. It's awesome. He was able to keep the ball in front of him with 3 Carlton players behind him. I think he had either Davidson or Josh Dolan to his right, but because the ball was in front of him and he was going towards the boundary off the centre square, he would have had to handball the ball over his head and behind his shoulder with his non-dominant hand in order to get the ball to them. Kept the ball in front of him, kept his composure. Dolan, or Davidson, I should say, found the space there. He eventually got the handball out, and it led to a score. I think that score ended up being a behind, but it was those little moments like that where the lesser lights, even though Vandermeer has been very good this year, the lesser lights not panicking and showing some composure. Again, a guy who's not necessarily young but showed ridiculous amounts of composure was James Harms. With about 1.5 minutes to go, about 45 out from defensive goal, he smothered or caught the Charlie Curnow shank that went about 2.5 metres and could have blasted the ball out of defensive 50, as anyone could have. He just held the kick. It went 20 metres at best, and the Dogs had 3 actual free players there, or maybe 2 free players and sort of a one-on-one 5 metres behind, if you want to call it that, and the Dogs were able to slow the ball down. Yes, they did have 1.5 entries probably after that in order to get the ball forward, but they didn't need to score. They already had the lead, and it was just those little things that they did that Carlton didn't, which is a bit of a problem. I also want to give a little bit of a shout out to Lockie McNeil as well, just because, again, he's one of these guys that is kind of easy to smack on social media, and maybe I just need to get off Twitter, but I thought he had some clean moments tonight, as did a lot of the Bulldogs players. And again, if you can't praise someone that you are happy to criticise, you are not an analyst, you are an asshole. I thought Luke Beveridge coached really well tonight. Credit to him, credit to the Dogs, who, look, arguably should be 3-0 right now. And then over to the Blues, and I know a lot of this is going to be about Michael Voss, I understand that. I'm going to kind of steer away from it, apart from this one sentence: keep an eye on Adam Simpson. That's all I'm going to say about that. Moving into the actual players here, the Blues, I think, have got 3 major problems. Their B graders are not actually B graders. So if you went through their list, yes, Cripps, I would put Chera in there now, as in what he's been able to do for this season alone. TDK, Curnow, just for the credits on the board, which I can understand being hypocritical because of the Chera analysis, and Wiedering. If you took them out, which I know you could do for every other club, but in that kind of experiment, if you took the top 5 performing players this year from every club and got rid of them, Carlton have a bottom 4 list in the comp. Genuinely. It's terrible just how leaky and inconsistent their list is. And look, again, they did have some guys that stood up in big moments. George Hewitt was outstanding. He actually is a B grader. And I mean a B+, absolutely. Brodie Kemp kicked a handful. Credit to him. The further up the ground he gets, seemingly the worse field kick he is, but close to goal, he was outstanding. I don't think Jack Silvagni has played a better AFL game than that. Was awesome. Nick Haynes had some nice moments after I wrote him off in the round 1 game against the Tigers. And I'm sure that you could go through and cherry pick a few others, Lewis Young, for example, but I'm pretty much calling it there. Now, ideally for the Blues, Jack Silvagni or Lockie Cowan would be 4 inches taller, so they could be their genuine second tall defender. That is not the case. But depth is the huge problem for the Blues. Their second big problem is kicking efficiency out of the back half. Again, Marvel Stadium, which the Blues do play home games on and play there quite a lot, require what the Bulldogs were able to do in big moments, which is take territory effectively, transition run, and get your handball receive game going. I have not seen a team stuff up 5-metre handballs more than Carlton did in this game. Leave that there. It's extraordinary. But Nick Newman going down is probably the most underrated injury in quite some time, to be honest, and just no one else. Saad just doesn't have that penetrating corridor ball, it seems, although he did have a pretty good night with some really good defensive efforts to chase down tackle, especially I think that was on Joshy Dolan as well, which was outstanding. Credit to him for that, but the ball movement out of their back half is shocking. And if you are going to play nearly on any ground, but Marvel especially, and the MCG, to be honest, for very different reasons, if you're not able to generate run out of your back half, and again, punish teams on turnover, you're screwed. So that's the secondary problem. I know they only lost by 8 points. They were up by 25 at one stage in this game. In the first quarter, they lost 3 of them. And the third problem is fitness. Now, call Michael Voss an over-optimist in his press conference last week for saying that Carlton are running games out well. Bless his heart for that. Now, he got rid of Andrew Russell, probably rightly so, to try a new wave of health and fitness and all that. I want you to just think for me. Think about Carlton's second halves this year. Like, how badly do you think they're running games out? Because they've had 27 scoring shots in 6 second half quarters. So the third and the fourth against Richmond, the third and the fourth against Hawthorn, and now the third and fourth quarters against the Bulldogs. So 27 scoring shots in that time. Look, it's not great. It's 4.5 scoring shots per quarter, but hey, if you're able to put some scores together, you're looking good. They've kicked 8 goals, 19. Their opposition, Richmond, Hawthorn, and the Bulldogs, not only have had 9 more scoring shots than them, so 36, they've kicked 24 goals, 12. Now, if I just do the math in my head, that is 67 points to 156. A point differential of 89. Effectively, 15 goals. Sums it up. I would have thought, yeah, they're in a world of hurt, but Blues fans, I don't really want to pile on any more than that. I don't really know what else can be done. I don't know if there is a short-term fix. Well, actually, I do know. It's a win. You're just going to need to find one. Could you settle and find some form after that? Potentially. But right now, Carlton treat winning like an 18-year-old dude treats nightclubs and picking up girls. The hardest is the first time. And they just can't do it. And neither can Carlton. And don't worry, that was me at 18 too, just quietly. Unfortunately, I don't have 100,000 people and a 30-year dry spell from success that are making people have high expectations for me. I am not 18 anymore. Lucky me. Carlton are still giving their fans a sense of hopelessness and a lack of consistency that is driving them insane. And I do feel for them. One of my very best friends in the world, Hank Wallenborn, he's a star. I call him Chef. He's a Blues fan. One of my favourite creators, Pommy and Oz, is a Blues fan, and I'm sure his reaction to this is going to be an enjoyable watch. Go watch it after this video. And the little bloke who is currently asleep and went to bed at halftime, he's a little bit crook at the moment, said to me at halftime, want the Blues to win for my dad. He's a superstar, his dad barracks for Carlton, and I have to tell him tomorrow that the Blues lost. So, I'm looking forward to that. That's about it. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to join Daz Talks Footy if you could. Go give me a follow on TikTok. Even if you watch my shorts, every number counts and I appreciate you. The Hawks are playing tomorrow night, which means the Saturday session and the Hawks reaction are actually clashing at that point in time. What's going to happen is on the Saturday night, as quickly as I can. The Saturday session will go out, and that'll get its own airtime until about half an hour before the first game on Sunday starts. There's only 2 on Sunday, I believe, so yay, we love that in a big way. And then the Hawks reaction from there will come out, because I want to give every team a chance to have their own airtime, and then the Sunday spotlight will come out on Sunday evening, and then the long form video on Tuesday. So fingers crossed you're looking forward to that. Fingers crossed you have a great weekend. Good luck if your team is playing. Apologies if they've already lost. Enjoy it if they've won. Take it easy, guys. See you tomorrow.